talk about growing rosemary. Rosemary is absolutely, hands down, my favorite herb. We're going to talk about the best ways to grow it, how to use it, when to plant it, all that kind of stuff. One thing I like about rosemary is, well, there's a million things I love about rosemary. It smells so good. I can't hardly stand here and do this video without sniffing this plant, okay? It is so easy. It's so super easy. If you're only gonna plant 3 herbs in your garden or 3 herbs in front of your house, this has got to be one of them. For one, it is drought resistant. It can hold up to almost any climate. Now, keep in mind, I live in the South. I'm a North Carolina gardener, so maybe things tend to grow a little bit better around here. But it's not exactly California where everything grows amazing. So we do get some cold weather, we get some hot weather, and this will survive it all. Okay, now one thing some people will tell you is don't water your rosemary a lot. Now that's true. It likes good drainage and it doesn't like a lot of water. It is subject to root rot if it gets waterlogged. However, what people forget to tell you is anytime you have a new plant, you need to keep it watered for the most part, even a cactus, until it's established. Once it's established, for rosemary about 6 months, you don't need to water it all the time. Rainwater enough will be plenty. So unless you've got some weird weather going on, you're hardly going to have to even water this stuff, okay? Plant it. Think about planting it in the sun. It likes a lot of sun and it will grow well in the sun. But if you're in a neighborhood or an area where you can really only plant in the front or the back of your house, choose the sunniest side and put it there. I am an organic gardener, so I don't like to put too much where exterminators are going to get close to it, or it's going to be too close to the grass, which gets fertilized and all that junk kind of gets in there. So I like to keep my herbs up near the garden where I plant my where I plant my vegetables. Rosemary is deer resistant, so bugs, deer, rabbits, all those things that like to get into your veggies, they don't like the smell of rosemary. So I'm going to show you my garden later, or at least the start of it for this spring. I like to border my garden with a row of herbs, so the deer or the rabbits or whatever, they don't even want to come into your garden once they smell this stuff, which is great because it's a natural pesticide. Okay, let's look at planting it. Okay, planting your rosemary. I highly recommend not planting your rosemary from seed. You can do it, but planting it from seed is very difficult. For one, it takes a long time to germinate and it's going to be a while before you get a plant. Now there's other things that I love growing from seed and we'll get to some of those varieties later, but your standard rosemary is Tuscan Blue. I mean, if you're buying this from Lowe's or Home Depot, that's what you're buying, is the Tuscan Blue variety, which is the most common, and it grows really well. It grows upright, so you don't have to worry about it spreading and getting into the dirt. So you really don't need that much, because once you have an established plant, an established rosemary plant will last 30 years. Yes, that's how easy it is. You get it in the ground and it's a perennial. For those of you new to gardening, whoop, got a little wasp there. Your perennials come back every year. Annuals you have to plant every year. So it's just plant it and forget it practically when it comes to rosemary. Now, I love planting a ton of rosemary in the spring, and I'll propagate it and I'll show you how to do that also. So if you want to give it away as gifts, it makes a really good Christmas present because people love it at Christmas, for cooking, or if you're going to somebody's house for Thanksgiving, bring them some rosemary. I love gardening gifts. I love giving them. I love making them. So if that's something that you're into, then you might want several rosemary plants. While you're waiting on that one to get established, you might want to buy 2. So one that you can really cut from your first year, and then once it's established, it'll just keep on giving. It's the gift that keeps on giving. Grab your shovel. Let's go plant some rosemary. Okay, let's get to planting. If you have some perfectly tilled soil, great. But if not, you really don't need it. Okay, you're just going to want to eyeball the size of your rosemary plant, and the size of your container, you want your hole to be about twice that size. Okay, so we're just going to dig a little hole about twice the size of our container. I like to do this to get your soil nice and loose, okay? Pull your soil out As you can see, I've got weeds everywhere. I'm not a professional gardener, all right? I'm a working full-time mother. I have a full-time job and 2 kids, so I'm gonna have some weeds in my garden, all right? All right, we're gonna take that loose soil, surround your plant, push it down in there, and you got a rosemary plant. Okay, what we're gonna go over now is if you want to propagate your rosemary. Instead of planting it from seed, what you wanna do is you can use an established plant or even a small one like this. Let's go with an established plant because technically that's what we should be using. So you're gonna wanna find one of the more young, kind of bendable, flimsy new growth. Okay, you don't want to go with woody hard growth. So here you want to take a pair of nice clean scissors. That's really important because you don't want bacteria and junk getting into your propagation. And you're just going to go ahead and clip one of your cuttings. Okay, and then what you want to do is you want to remove some of the bottom pieces of growth here so that you just have a little bit just like this, okay? And all we're gonna do is, I like to use a nice small vase instead of something big, but you just want to fill up your vase or whatever you have with clean water. Now, you can also use cinnamon as like kind of a rooting hormone to make sure this is really clean and doesn't have any bacteria. It might help. You don't have to though. So all you're gonna do is take your nice green cutting, you're gonna put it in your water, and you're just gonna leave it, okay? And a few days from now, you're gonna check it every single day. I want you to check it every single day and make sure you have nice clean water in there. If you need to add a little bit of water, add a little bit of water. But don't move it, okay? Plants in general don't like to be moved around a lot, especially your cuttings. So you're just gonna leave it. If you have a greenhouse, great, but a windowsill is fine. And in a few days, this is gonna have roots on it, and you'll be able to plant it and have as many rosemary plants as you want because you just keep doing this over and over and over. It's that easy. I wanna talk to you a little bit about some of my favorite uses for rosemary. Okay, not to mention cooking. You want to use your young, fresh herbs for cooking, all right? The ones that are flimsy, the new growth, you can kind of tell because they move really easily and they just look younger than the ones, for instance, this one has been on for quite a while. It's kind of woody. The stem is really woody. When you move it back and forth, it's not flimsy, okay? It'll snap when you break it. You can hear it break, and it's gonna be more towards the bottom. I want you to use your rosemary, okay? The more you trim and cut and use your herbs, the bigger and better they're gonna grow, okay? So, using rosemary, obviously cooking is great. If you have some young rosemary, my friend Lisa makes this awesome. She takes a whole chicken, she roasts it, she puts olive oil all over it, sea salt, and rosemary, just sprigs of rosemary on it, and bakes that thing. Oh, it's amazing. So not to mention also in your salads, I like to do a nice spring herb salad and cut up a lot of my herbs to go in there. When I'm using rosemary though, it's kind of pungent and it's strong, so you don't want to put a bunch of it in your salad. If you want to add a little bit of flavor to your salad, just take your scissors and cut a few of the little sprigs off, just like that, just enough. You wouldn't even want this much in a salad. Just cut them up real fine so that you don't get a big piece of rosemary in your salad. Okay, not to mention a million ways you can cook with rosemary. Rosemary also has really a ton of medicinal properties. It helps with memory. So if you have an ADHD kid or an elderly person in the home, you might want to put some fresh rosemary or even older rosemary in their rooms. One thing I love about flower arrangements with rosemary, I'll put rosemary or dried lavender, the woody kind, okay? Just take a little bit of the bottom off, put them in your flower arrangements. You don't even need water, okay? So this is a great winter time because it's evergreen. It's gonna be green all year long. So I just put them in a vase without any water. When it gets so dry that it's almost kind of like, oh, that doesn't look good anymore, what I do is it'll be so dry, you can practically just shake it like that and all the needles will fall off. Perfect. I want them to fall on the floor because then I vacuum them up, and everywhere I vacuum, the whole house smells like rosemary. It's a great way to keep your house smelling fresh, and realtors actually You've probably seen it on Pinterest or something. I think realtors use like a rosemary vanilla type mixture to make their home smell really good. But those are just a couple of uses for rosemary. Google it. I mean, I'm not an expert, but there's so many things that you can do with rosemary. I also like to just take a little piece of it every now and then. When I come home from work, I usually stop off in my garden in the spring. In the spring, summer, I'm down here every single day. But in the wintertime, about once a week, I'll stop and get some rosemary for something, and I'll take a little piece of it. Again, these hardier ones, the tends to stick a little bit more, but I'll take this and just put it in my car as an air freshener up in my visor. So I can't get enough of this stuff. Lastly, for those of you who want to grow your rosemary in pots, that's an excellent option. You want to have some good drainage, so maybe some rocks at the bottom of your pot, or using a clay pot is always a good idea. One that, this has some paint on it, but it's not glazed, so when it's shiny and glazed, the water can't seep through. You just want to have some good drainage, and remember to place it in the sun, because you want a good 6 to 8 hours for this to be at its best. Guys, send me your rosemary pictures. I want to see some 20-year-old rosemary or some 30-year-old rosemary, or how high you can get it to grow. I'd love to see some good 6-foot tall rosemary. Or if you have other tips and tricks, please feel free to put them in the comments below. Take care.